Story time. This whole video probably gonna run an hour, but these clips are gonna be a lot. So let's start with my story. I have to write it out on my laptop here. So chronic pain, or what I like to call and look at it now as reclaiming stewardship over your own body, trust in your own body. Either of those are good. When I was 16, I injured my hip, something called the torn hip flexor in colloquial terms, or labrum partial tear, they said, without the scans. Never got the scans, I guess I never needed it. It still clicks a lot, but a 10-hour hike in Peru 2 months ago tell me I'm doing all right. And that injury led to a decade of self-directed biomechanics work and research, and a working model of the body most practitioners don't have, let alone most people. Another pain I had was eczema, covering both wrists, both elbow pits, neck, all over. You can see it's kind of dry even right now. No eczema though, but it's all relegated to one finger now. I would also cover my legs, and that would result in a hospitalization in my early 20s after being discharged with a steroid cream and good luck. The other part that I still call chronic pain is the chronic anxiety I had that resulted in several panic attacks deep into the night, and with insomnia on top of that. But that was a nervous system that never stood down. That was something that needed to collapse and had physical signs and symptoms of a body that I could not trust, and a breath that could not expand. So the hip is the most direct problem I addressed. The eczema, anxiety were byproducts, not intending to cure or fix, as those are simply things put into remission. Can't get to a place where you're never anxious. Sometimes it does feel like I wish I could, but we persist. And I can get into my story a lot deeper. The anxiety, the pain, the confusion, the frustration, physical therapy, never answering questions, just give me suggestions, stretches, and the tests not really tell me much. Testing range of motion, testing relative pain. I still use a pain scale today. That's very useful for me. But what I wish I had was what I wrote down here. So I'm not trying to remember it off the dome, although this is kind of common sense to me at this point. I thought I'd share it so it'd be common sense to you, hopefully, at some point. And so the title of this page is How to Gain Stewardship of Your Body. And so I wrote 3 principles. One is to accept your body's coordination and capacity is all mediated by pressure. Your pressure systems, the breath in your lungs is mediated by a balance of pressure. If that wasn't there, you could not breathe. As well as abdominal pressure, even pressure in your head, neck, and jaw that essentially holds your tongue to your palate so that you can breathe through your nose easily. That is something that people are beginning to talk about, but I'm very rarely hearing people talk about the connection between that and the pressure in your core. Number 2 is accept you will not be confident and trust your body unless you test and measure it. So I call these stress tests. They can be just simply something that gives you pain. You check how much pain is there, not if there is pain or not. This is a very, very common mistake. You check if pain is there rather than how much pain is there and how often. This is what separates resolution and management. People tend to give up if the pain returns at any capacity. If you have a low back pain and it comes back, you don't measure how long did you go without back pain. You don't measure how bad is this instance of back pain. You don't consider the stressful events in your life that surrounded that back pain. You just think, I'm in pain, I'm a failure. And I say this from personal experience. I say this from experiencing pain in my hip flexor, in my shoulder, in my neck, and thinking, oh, the pain came back, I failed, let me try something else. And then jumping from modality to modality without ever understanding the principles. That's what the purpose of the past 10 years was for. It was to understand how to actually correlate and connect the frequency and intensity of the pain with what I was doing. That's number 2, stress test. You can stress test for pain, you can stress test for muscle imbalance. I'm at a point in my life where I'm stress testing for muscle imbalance. A quick example is a maximum effort sprint. If you can do it for more than 20 seconds, it is not maximum effort. If you cannot get to that maximum effort, that is data in itself. Right now I'm about 60-40 on a bad day, 60% right side, 40% left side in terms of effort or perceived effort. Trying to get that to 50-50, at least by the end of the year, maybe next year, who knows. These results go up and down, right? But you want an upward trend towards no pain, towards coordination, towards symmetry. Well, no one's ever going to be perfectly symmetrical. You can aim for functional symmetry. Number 3, this third principle is the hardest one. It is to be radically honest about consistency and recovery. Life stress hurts recovery. Life stress hurts recovery. Life stress hurts recovery. And this is going to be forgotten over and over. Speaking from personal experience. If you have any kind of emotional stressor, assuming you acknowledge your emotions, that's probably helps, your recovery is going to hurt because your sleep is going to hurt, because you're going to forget to eat a meal or evaluate your micronutrient intake. All these things that come downstream of your capacity for stress. So at the same time you're building capacity, you might have an unexpected stressor. And an unexpected stressor is going to change your timeline. And if you thought it was linear, I'm sorry anyone ever convinced you your recovery journey could be linear. That's going to be something to unlearn, maybe with a therapist. I don't know. But I had to come to grips with that many times. And that brings me back to this trend. You might have these ups and downs. Less pain, more pain. Less pain, more pain. But look at my hand as it goes up, slightly down, up, slightly down, up, really down. But it's not below, I'll use my shoulder as a standard here, where you started. And it keeps going up and down, but it's trending net up. This is the point. This is why, even with a clicking, weak left hip, I could hike for 10 hours, and the biggest pain I had at the end was a purple toenail. You know, a 10-hour hike might not be that impressive to many of you out there, but for me, at 260 pounds and not acclimated to altitude, I was pretty happy. I was pretty happy about it. And I'm going to choose to be happy. It's a hard choice, but we're here. I want to go over my example split of exercise, but that's kind of boring, so I'm going to go into other stories. People like stories, I hear, so I'm going to try to lean into that. So I went over my story, the hip, the eczema, the anxiety. We're going to go to the story I like to think about the most. Excuse me. We'll go to Sumi's story, a parent and child story, although I was mostly helping the parent, where she couldn't walk more than 1 kilometer. She had repeat ankle tears and just all kinds of abdominal issues from childbirth. Her child is 8, so it's quite a long time after childbirth. But she reported feeling her abdominal separation close up after 5 weeks of dedicated work. And so that shows me she was taking this seriously, and she was dedicated to the process. She was practicing consistently. She was recovering intentionally, because otherwise 3 months later she could not save a drowning dog. So this is a stellar example. This is like up there, top of the top, in terms of transformation. Not every story is going to be like that. This is going to go in descending order here. The next one is John. After years of knee and ankle pain, through various physical therapies, exercise modalities, facing repeat surgery at this point in our conversation when we first met, he's now mountain biking and playing soccer with his kid without worrying about his body breaking down. And he's sleeping through the night without gasping. He was about to get a sleep test before we talked. He may still get one, I don't know, but he's breathing better and not choking for air last we talked. That is also a great result. A lot of people deal with sleep disordered breathing and apnea issues, and very rarely is the whole body addressed. It's more common that the neck and jaw are addressed and produce some results, but the results don't last because, fun fact, the lungs are below the neck, down here in the chest, and the space the lungs can expand are determined by if your ribs can expand in all directions, left and right, front and back, up and down. And that's the point of this training modality. But I digress. Back to the stories. The mechanics are boring, I understand. Boring and effective is the trend for getting results in anything in life, it sounds like. I'm working on that too. I think I can find ways to make it not as boring or less boring, or an exercise in concentration, in mindful concentration, which is boring, but can be fun in a roundabout way, I think. Anyways, next big one was, his name is Yash, spelled Y-A-S-H. My phone keeps auto-correcting Y-E-A-H to Yash now. It's kind of annoying. But anyways, he had a daily inhaler use, and after a few months of working together, I asked him, when was the last time you used your inhaler? And he told me 5 months ago, around December. So we started working together the end of spring, around May, beginning of May. We might have stopped using it end of June or July, it sounds like. Whatever the case is, had been at least several months without using his inhaler. And that was all from posture strength work, pressure systems training, biomechanics, pressure breathing. That's what I call it, BPB. That's the current acronym. I'm going to ride that for a while. A couple more here that still stand out. One is Marcelli, who had a lower back curvature that is not quite scoliosis, but anyone with two functioning eyes, could see it was more than a degree off. Or from a distance of like 10, 20 feet, you could see it was not quite straight. And after 7 to 8 weeks, it's straightened out. And that is not to say we cured her scoliosis. She was never diagnosed in the first place. There's an assumption that it would have gone back to normal without intervention, that at least for the intellectually lazy or people that are in conventional medicine and are trying to fit the explanation into the textbook reasoning. Whatever you want to say about it, there's another method called the Schroth method that seems to walk back the curvature as well. So some people understand these pressure principles somewhat. I wish more people understand it more deeply. I did not want to spend 10 years reverse engineering this, but here we are. A couple more results. Alejandro couldn't walk for 30 minutes without pain. This is a guy just in his early 30s. So this is not the curse of your 30s, because a few months later he was sprinting pain-free. He was also quite dedicated because he really believed he could walk this pain back, and he did. And he did. Another one is Andrew, who had shoulder pain. He had a surgery that removed a rib. It was called Tommy John surgery because he was a pitcher. And he was feeling broken down from MMA. Like, his feet were flat. He was moving like he was moving through molasses. He was not able to keep his arms up no matter what he did. And then he felt more steady and more capable through the breath work, even with mood improvements, which I did not ask for that, but he's offered that update up, which was great. Good to hear. I also experience that when I'm consistent. And there's a few more that aren't as crazy. You know, chronic pain, walking it back, decreasing over time, even after trying for the physical therapist. But that's usually the first thing people go to. But the job of a physical therapist is only to get you home, to be able to do daily tasks or daily activities of daily living. Not without pain, just to be able to do them. That's when they kick you out and the insurance doesn't cover you anymore. I don't like that standard, so I'm trying to do something different. I am doing something different. I am. So here's how I typically approach the week. I try to get at least 3 sessions of biomechanics pressure breathing at a time. It is as simple as the tree breathing on my page. You are still as a tree, and you're squeezing all your muscles and breathing at the same time. And ideally, you're breathing more and more evenly in your ribs over time, over the session of the workout and over week-to-week changes. So Monday, 30 minutes, biomechanics pressure breathing, 1 to 2 hours walking. This was just the past week. Tuesday, 30 minutes, biomechanics pressure breathing, 1 hour of walking or even less. Wednesday is a rest day, maybe 30 minutes of walking. Thursday, I bring it back up, maybe up to 45 minutes of the pressure breathing. Friday is rest, 30 minutes, maybe an hour walking. Saturday is some kind of stress test. So hill sprints, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo. This morning I ran the Harvard Stadium. It was about 373 lunges worth of stadium steps. Next time I'm going to go for 434 or 14 flights. Today was 12 flights. Last time was 10 flights. Sunday is typically rest day, maybe 30 minutes to an hour of walking to run that again. And the pressure breathing is supposed to be an 8 out of 10 perceived exertion. So 10 out of 10 is like you're being chased by a tiger and you need to tap into every energy and exertion reserve you have in your body. 1 out of 10 is like sleeping or laying on the ground on your back, which if you have chronic pain, even that can be effortful. So relatively speaking. 8 is like you are sweating, you are tired, you are fatigued, you're hungry if your metabolism is working afterwards. 8 out of 10, 2 to 3 times a week. Maybe the third time is closer to 6 or 7 if I'm having a life stress. Life stress is real. It affects you physically. The stress test is, of course, as high as you can go. I call it 9 out of 10 perceived exertion. That's the aim. I want to see where my body is breaking down more. Like right now, my right back is a little tighter than my left. So there's a little bit of imbalance. Still that 60-40, working on that. But no pain. No pain. 20 minutes. Not too bad. So how to gain stewardship of your body? That is the goal. Stewardship of your body is the goal. So when I say that, I had all these ideas to give myofascial release points. Most people never know how to release the fascia in their abdominals. You just lay on the lacrosse ball or tennis ball and breathe for a while. And if your body shakes, wait until the shaking comes down and all that. But that's also kind of boring, and buying into this shtick of using massage and myofascial release in a dependent manner. The goal of the pressure breathing is not to build dependency. The goal of the pressure breathing is to build capacity. And so if you can't go a week without the training and feel relatively the same, the training is not working. If you're sprinting and stress testing and the test doesn't change month to month, accounting for life stress, the training isn't working. And it could be the training, it could be your consistency, it could be your recovery strategies, but it doesn't change that it produced real results for people who are not getting results. And it doesn't change the fact that if you test it like you're testing a scientific hypothesis, the hypothesis in this case would be, does training my pressure systems, the squeezing, the breathing, the alignment pieces, make my body have less pain, more symmetry, and more capacity, coordination, balance, all those things. Pain is the easiest to measure because it's more front of mind, but it's also the easiest to forget. And it's easy to get into the feelings of it rather than the measurement of it. Almost as if measuring it makes you acknowledge some emotional component. But if you measure your pain on a scale of 1 to 10, you will have data and you will have a trend. And then you can make a change and know if that change actually helped you or not. If you make a change and try to remember based on your emotional events, that data is not going to help you. In fact, it's going to make it more confusing and harder to track. And this is something I had to wrestle with for many years. Probably need to go to therapy for some parts of it. But just simply writing it down. Like, I wrote down these stories because now they're real. Now it's on paper. Now it's not spinning around my head. Even having it shown on a computer is a little bit like that. But the writing, there's something different. Something more real about that. Slowing down and taking it in. Seeing the results of lives change, at least for a season, indefinitely if they keep up the practice. But my point is, it's easy to jump from modality to modality and go by feelings alone. It's even harder when feelings are important. You want to feel better. You want to feel like you're happier, more worry-free, or more trusting in your body as a feeling. And as a result, I value, of course, the feeling and the trust in your body. But if you go feeling to feeling and you don't track consistently, and if you ask yourself what is consistent, you'll know. If you ask yourself, am I consistent? You'll know. More often than not. Consistently tracking means writing it down every day. If you miss a day, it's not consistent. And I can definitely be better about that, for sure. But I have my numbers. My right back, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being pain and 1 being no tightness, is a 2 right now. And after a high exertion event, it tends to go to a 2 or a 3. And on a baseline, it's about between a 1 and a 2. And when I'm consistent with my practice, when I do it 3, ideally 4 times a week of that 30 minutes of biomechanics pressure breathing, that goes down to a 1 baseline. So that's data. Those are numbers I can track. Even if I don't have a pain I can track, I have a number I can track. You can make a 10 scale for anything. It's conceptually very simple. The consistency in executing it is not. Because it is easy to get into your mind about, oh, what if this thing I'm doing isn't the right thing? I'm wasting my time. I should jump to the next thing. And then you don't even give it a full try. You're not even sure if it worked or not. And you're left with more doubt and confusion. Again, this is speaking from personal experience. I spent many years in this state just because I didn't know what else to do, so I was doing this thing. I thought I wanted to jump to one or the other thing, but something in me was like, no, let me be more objective. Then I could get results. And that objectivity is coming back to bite me because the feelings do matter. The emotional result does matter. It probably matters the most. It's also the hardest to measure. So don't measure results by emotional events. Measure results by numbers and stress tests. But also keep in mind the emotional goals, the trust in your body, the being a good steward of your body. The capacity you're trying to build, have numbers to put to it, have objectivity to put to it. Otherwise, it's like an anchor to your emotional state. Your pain is this anchor that drags you down and keeps you in this pit of chronic pain. And it's a downward spiral. It doesn't just stay in a single place. You can tell yourself, oh, it's going to be like this forever. In fact, it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse because the effects compound with time. The half-hearted attempts at trying practices, at trying stretching, mobility, and barbell exercises. Not to say those don't do anything. Of course they do. But if your goal is to get out of pain and you're trying to take the shortest path, that is not the shortest path. My goal is to be out of pain, stay out of pain, and keep building capacity. Keep pushing my body with sprints, with jiu-jitsu, with stadium climbs and hiking. And keep pushing that and live in the edge of my capacity, because that creates that emotional satisfaction, that emotional event, which is important to me. And is a measurement in itself, but it's a measurement spanning not days, not weeks, maybe months, but probably years. And there's something to be said about an autistic nervous system and its heightened sensitivity to its sensory environment. So sensory sensitivity. And these things compound. It compounded into those panic attacks. It compounded into this slouched, collapsed posture that it was an effort, a conscious effort to stand up out of. And if I just stand here and I think of the most fearful, stressful events in my life, I'll probably go back to that. So it's a mental and a physical task to occupy this space, to expand in all directions from the ribs, and to train that. And I'm not thinking about that. I don't want to think about that all day. I want to train it in my body 30 minutes at a time, a few times a week, and forget about it. Because the emotional event, the emotional state is the most important goal. I want to get to that state where I trust my body so I don't think about how my body is. And if I think about how my body is, that is coming from a place of curiosity, not of condemning myself or my body as a failure, as less than, as lacking, as scarce. And this is sounding like some motivational speech or life coaching, and it's probably a better internal dialogue than what most people have. So whatever it sounds like, hope it's helpful to you. And so the chronic pain is a means or a lens for personal or spiritual development, at least for me. The pain is a way of seeing where where am I not being consistent and in integrity with my word? Where are my actions not following through on my word? Where can I examine that gap, that lack of follow through, and see what's behind it? Is it fear? Is it uncertainty? Is it something more specific in either of those two things? And so this is what many mean when they say that pain is a gift. It is insight into your automatic state of living. Because if you decide to identify with the pain and accept it, that becomes your automatic state of living. It becomes this downward spiral. It becomes this anchor pulling you down that downward spiral. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be answered. I truly believe if you want to get out of pain, you'll keep looking for the answer because you believe it's out there. I believe it's out there for you too. This pressure breathing, this coaching process might be that thing. It might not. It might not be for you. Maybe you want to try the yoga. Maybe you want to try all these other modalities. Maybe you want to try going by feelings and not by numbers. That's worth a try. It's worth a try, and you can try it and try it and try it and hope and live unconsciously. That's an option. It's not a bad option. There's no moral judgment in these things because sometimes the pain just goes away and you can't really explain it, and that's great. Sometimes it lingers. Sometimes you have a hip that keeps clicking and you know that if you're not on top of it, bad things happen. And there is a satisfaction in being on top of it and being able to climb to new physical heights, personally speaking. And at the same time, when you build capacity, it's almost like, for me, I'm seeking suffering. I'm seeking stress. Not more stress than I can recover and adapt to, though. But the more I build capacity, the more stress I can seek and adapt to. So when I do these stress tests, the hill sprints, the jiu-jitsu, the hiking, it is showing me I have a greater capacity for suffering. And in that suffering is a lot of insight. And so the more suffering I can have capacity for, the more insight I'm allowed. Like on the most recent hike, before I post about this, I meditated on how I see myself dying if I lived in fear and scarcity. And I imagined myself in a noose. I imagined myself dangling from the ceiling in a clear and clear vision as I got towards the peak, because it was just that hard of a hike. And also, I wasn't shying away from that fear. I didn't have the energy to. I just had to let it run its course, essentially. And in that was a lot of clarity. Like, if I live in fear, this is my future. And that's the feeling. It might not be the physical reality of a future, but it's the feeling of a future. That fear and hopelessness that would leave me dangling from the ceiling. That is the pinnacle of that fear of death, of dying. And the common mistake that I and many others do is that rejection is equivalent to that fear. And even just saying that right now is clarifying, because it just simply isn't true. Rejection or someone saying no is not equivalent to dying. It is not the same thing. But the feelings, being guided by the feelings of it, will lead you to that conclusion. Even if you say that it's not true, if it feels the same, then it will be the same. And your body will break down and collapse under this stress. Again, speaking from personal experience. could even have someone confirm to you that what they're doing will lead to a bad end or bad results. And then they still choose that result, or they still choose that way. And that is the result of not tracking and measuring. There's a limit to the clarity that comes from tracking and measuring, but that limit is pretty high. That bar, you'd really have to like spend years at it to get to the limit of that clarity. Like, I'm still learning about myself at the end of a hard run, a hard hike, hard sprint. It clarifies the mind so much. You're thinking about all your anxieties and worries, and you're just exerting, you're tapping into some evolutionary code of like, I'm anxious, I need to work out, I need to exert myself, and then I will be less anxious. Maybe even not anxious for like 5 minutes. Although I have a suspicion that's only if you're not autistic. But anyways, I had an idea to shoot something clarifying for people on how they measure their progress and how to be more consistent, confident, trusting in themselves. And short of solving your mommy and daddy issues, the tracking measuring is it. The stress testing is just an extension of the tracking measuring. I mean, more examples for the stress test. And I mentioned this briefly earlier, but if you have a movement or a position that gives you pain, that is your test. If you cannot sprint, or it can be how far you can walk before pain or discomfort comes on. Like the example for Sumi was started at 1 kilometer, or she couldn't even get to 1 kilometer. Now she's pushing 3, 4, maybe 5. She's testing that out in the next couple weeks. Wow, a bunch of life stress is going on. Okay, so that's one thing. It's easy to take your progress during times of low life stress as the standard. And that doesn't really mean anything. The standard is fake. There's no standard. There's either you trend towards less pain, more capacity, or you trend towards more pain, less capacity. It really is that simple, but it's like this oscillating up and down, right? It's like, you can draw it here. Draw it out so it's easier to see. Time, pain. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So this poorly drawn graph, right? Pain on the y-axis, time on the x-axis. You can see it's trending down. The pain is trending down, but it comes up sometimes. Not nearly where it was at the beginning, but it comes up, and even comes up to previous peaks. But it trends down, and you can see those peaks in your personal life and your personal journey as failures. The first couple years in this process, this decade-long process, that's what I saw them as. I saw them as failures. That because I experienced pain, and it was as much pain as I experienced a week or two ago, not a month ago, and definitely not a year ago, that I was failing because the pain came back vaguely similarly than it was a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. And you can just flip that for capacity and coordination if you don't have pain, the way I'm doing it now. And I understand life stress is going to kill my recovery, and it's going to take me an extra day compared to what it would have been before. And so that example split, where I have like 3 days of recovery sometimes, that is for a stressful time period. It is a stressful time period. I need 3 days of active recovery, and that's okay. That's life. I've been thinking a lot about how about this sentence? No one can tell you if you're living right or wrong. But if you ask yourself and you sit with it long enough, you will come to an answer. And you will probably come to a fruitful answer. Because it's not about a yes or no. Am I living right or wrong? Or one word answer, right or wrong. It's about in what ways. The longer you sit with it, the more answers come. Like for me, in the wrong ways have been not building capacity to hold space for vulnerability and consequence of action in a conversation. Not building that ability explicitly or that capacity explicitly have been ways I've been living wrongly. Ways I've been living rightly are ways that have produced the results I just went over, not as a means to boost my ego, but as a means to give evidence that the actions that have happened have been fruitful. The work has been fruitful. This modality, this pressure breathing, stress testing modality is like a tree planted by streams of living water, who bears fruit in season and whose leaves do not wither. Not every season. It does not bear fruit every season, but it bears fruit in the right season. Its leaves do not wither. It does not become a process that stops giving back. The deeper into the process I go, the more it gives back, the more capacity I build, physically and mentally. And this affirmation was for you, and it was for me.